So here I am in probably one of my favorite cities, Athens, Greece. I love Athens, Greece. You can see the Acropolis right there over my shoulder. And we are in the shadow of the birthplace of democracy, the cradle of democracy. Now, when it comes to ancient Athens and the 5th century Athenians who built that temple, we have to kind of put an asterisk next to the word democracy, right? Because this was a slave society, and obviously slaves weren't allowed to benefit from democracy. It was also a patriarchal society, so if you were a woman, no democracy for you. But if you were a male citizen in Athens, democracy wasn't just this abstract idea, something that we vote for representatives and they go and do the job for us, hopefully, right? No. This was direct democracy. It was your responsibility to participate in the governance of the city-state. And you would gather, all of the free citizens would gather in an assembly, and they would hash it out. They would hash out the problems that they were facing, the things that they thought were important, and they would vote on those things. And it was a very powerful system. It was a really interesting and intriguing system for the ancient world. And as early practitioners of democracy, of course, the Athenians are among the first to run into its stumbling blocks. Now, the Athenians did understand that there would be abuses to the system. Every system created by man has weaknesses, it has shortcomings, and can be exploited by those with enough power. So they did have some checks, and they did have some bottlenecks to keep, for instance, there being an inordinate amount of power by the most wealthy citizens in the society, from using the demos to gather more power. But sometimes these things didn't always go as planned. One of the major problems that the Athenians found with democracy was the tendency to produce demagogues, right? Demagogues. And what are these demagogues? These demagogues were usually brilliant orators, very, very skillful people who understood that they can move the masses of people through emotional appeals. The ideal, of course, was that you make rational appeals to the people and the people make rational decisions. Obviously, if you want to have a democracy, that's what you want to see. Rational arguments leading to rational decisions. But the demagogues understood that human beings are not necessarily motivated by reason. They're motivated by emotions, especially when things aren't necessarily going well. So, for instance, in the 5th century, when Athens was experiencing plague and was experiencing war that wasn't necessarily going very well, it was easy for demagogues to use that and to suggest, what can we do to actually bring greatness to Athens, right? And they made those emotional appeals. Probably one of the most famous of these demagogues was a fellow by the name of Alcibiades. Alcibiades was a student of Socrates, among some of these other philosophers. Very brilliant guy, brilliant orator, and he was able to stir the emotions of the people of Athens, and he did that not toward the benefit of Athens. No, he did it toward the benefit of Alcibiades. He did it for his own benefit, his own glory. And what he ended up doing was leading Athens to ruin by whipping up the people and getting them to support his own personal ambitions, not a rational course on the best interests of Athens, but rather an emotional appeal to the interests of Alcibiades. And he ended up leading Athens to a devastating war, an attack against the Sicilian city of Syracuse, which was a disaster. He led the expedition, he led it in, and it ended in disaster at the worst possible time. The Athenians were involved already in a war with Sparta, of all city-states, and this campaign against Syracuse helped to weaken the Athenian military to the point where ultimately Athens lost the Peloponnesian War. Spartans came in, cleared it out, and then appointed their own tyrants who ruled Athens instead of the demos, at least for a very short time. They were known as the 30 tyrants, right? Now, it didn't take long for Athens to realize, well, wait a minute, we've got these oligarchs that have been put in charge that we didn't put in charge, and they're running things for the oligarchy, which is what oligarchs do. And it didn't take long for the Athenians to say that's not the direction they want to go, and they wanted to reestablish their democracy. But in following demagogues like Alcibiades and Cleon and some others, it showed the weakness of the democracy that can be exploited by folks with the skills to whip up emotional fervor, to build on emotional resentments, to build on fears, and to empower themselves based on that oratory and rhetorical skill. This is something that maybe those of us who are interested in democracy need to understand as we're going through our daily lives. Athens learned this lesson 2,500 years ago, and we're still trying to learn it today.